I'm now going to jump to my second topic, and it has to do with the by-elections. Kumawu is over. We know who has won. We know the performance of the NDC and the MPP. But there have been all kinds of interpretations that have been put to the numbers that have been churned out from Kumawu. Some say the NDC has done well. Some say there's been a poor performance by the NDC. Some say the MPP has done performed abysmally. Some say the MPP has done well. But these are typically, statements made by politicians. And so we decided to bring a poster. That's Mr. Musa Dankwa, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Info Analytics. Now, it's a polling company. So they did some polls prior to the Kumawu by-elections, and, it sort of tallied to a very large extent with the outcomes that we saw after the Kumawu by-elections. And so he's going to be walking us through a bit of history about Kumawu and whether the numbers that we saw were surprising or not surprising, the factors that produced those outcomes, and what this portends going into the 2024 elections. And so you don't want to miss it. Also, let me say that I have the Member of Parliament for the Buem constituency, the Honourable Kofi Adams. He's here with us, and then also the man or the gentleman who speaks for government on issues of governance and security. That's Mr. Pagri Boachi Dankwa. He's also joined us for this conversation. Of course, they are not stopped from commenting on the earlier conversation that I had briefly before we moved to Kumawu. So let me quickly say good morning to the Honourable Kofi Adams. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you here, sir. No, it's a protest. I thought we had. Oh, sorry. Please switch your microphone on. I'm happy the microphone was off when you said what you said earlier.
Repeat it. I have a protest.
All I can say is we are sorry. We are so sorry. Please, no. please don't bring it up. We beg.
Well, once you said you're going to give us the opportunity to have a bite on the earlier issues,
you would.
Maybe it will compensate for the
the crimes that I have perpetrated. Yeah. Anyway, Pagri, good morning. It's good to see you. And it's always a pleasure. How is new job in? Oh, sorry, he's on. Yeah, his microphone is on. How's the ground? I know you're contesting the new job in North.
Ebuakwa North.
Ebuakwa North. Sorry, constituency.
Ebuakwa North is okay. I bring greetings to the chairman of the constituency, Alhaji Seidu, and the rest of the constituency executives. Chairman Cass, the youth organizer, the women's organizer, the treasurer, Dr. Irene, the electoral area coordinators. I bring greetings to all of them. I'm actually coming from the constituency this morning to be on the studio, so it's good to be here. Good morning.
And we wish you all the best. We think you're a fantastic gentleman. I'll be surprised at all if you cause an upset and you become the next member of parliament for that constituency, because you deserve it. Anyway, let me come to Mr. Musa Dankwa. Good morning. Alhaji, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you too.
What I need to clarify, so I wanted to confirm something. Have you been to Hajj before? Because, these days we just call people Alhaji by heart. You see, But anyway, good to see you, Musa Dankwa. So, now, Kumawu by-elections. We've seen the outcomes. There's been a lot of interest in Kumawu by-elections, and outcomes has triggered all kinds of conversations about the performance of the two political parties. What do we need to know? Why do you think Kumawu has generated so much interest? What do we need to know about Kumawu? And do you think that the outcomes are indications of anything at all for any of the political parties to be aware of?
All right. I think why Kumawu became so important was because of its numerical impact in MPP's majority in parliament.
Okay.
If anything untoward had happened there. That's the first thing. And the second thing was the kind of campaign we saw in 2020 between Baswa late and Kokudia senior was what people thought, if that should pan out again, then there could be problem in MPP in Kumawu. I think these were the two main factors that drove that kind of anxiety and the euphoria around Kumawu. But as to what lessons we will learn from Kumawu going forward, I think the numbers will begin to speak for themselves when we begin to go into that numbers. It's all going to be about turnout, apathy. These are the two fundamental reasons.
So what do we need to know about, or what presentation do you have for us this morning?
We just want to quickly look at the polls before the elections, and then look at the actual elections, and then see the numbers, the gainers and the losers in that election. And then just suppose that to the polling we have for the national elections and the turnout in some other areas that we expect. And then also we hone onto the break the aid issue at the tail end of the discussion.
All right, so please shoot. Go ahead with the company's presentation.
Your screen has frozen.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we would take the mic. We'll take the camera off you. We'll sort the issues with the screen, and then we'll come back to you. The screen has decided to freeze on Mr. Musa Dankwa for some very strange reason. But once I tell, let me come to Mr. Kofi Adams. Kofi Adams, do you have any preliminary comment to make on Kojo Nkrumah's explanation about why the government or the president sought to interpret review of free SHS as cancellation because, well, according to Kojo Nkrumah, the NDC has a history. So everybody else is free to call for a review, but for the NDC and President John Mahama, because your review would mean cancellation.
Well, Boru, let me first and foremost say good morning to your viewers and good morning to colleague panelists,
All right.
Palgrave and Mr. Musa Dankwa. I must say that, Boru, I had expected you to push Kojo a bit more for him to be truthful. And sometimes you let go officialdom when they speak and peddle falsehood.
Right.
Because clearly, you all know the history of health insurance, and that until the NDC came to power, what we had was a mutual health insurance.
Right.
It was district-based. You could not cross, it could not be described as national health insurance.
Right.
It was the NDC administration that reviewed health insurance and made it national, such that you could cut across regions, districts, and still benefit from the services. Again, you do know too well that health insurance today is suffering, and that in the year 2022, not a dime was released for purposes of health insurance. And so if the system is collapsing, it is only collapsing under the NPP administration. And the percentages are out there. If you care to find out, I could read some for you from the budget presentations over the period. In 2013, for example, the amount collected was 830.69 million Ghana cedi. What was released was 492.98 million, and that is 59% of the monies collected as National Health Insurance Levy was released to the National Health Insurance Authority for the performance of what? Its functions. In 2014, 980.31 million was collected. 731 was released, and that is 75% of the amount of money that was collected for that purpose injected into health insurance. In 2015, 1,162.7 million Ghana cedi was collected, and 846.64 was released, and that is 73% of the funds collected for that purpose was released for national health insurance. In 2016, 1,279,040,000 Ghana cedi was collected, and 1,101.85 million Ghana cedi was released, and that is 86%. Moru, if you move further, you would observe that under the NPP administration, in 2017, 1,564.01 was collected and 1,205.38 was released, and that is 77%. Then in 2018, it started dropping. 32% was released. 1,579.49 was collected, and only a paltry 506 million 0.8 was released to National Health Insurance Authority for the performance of its function. 2019 went up a little bit. 1,262 million 0.92 was collected, and 721 million 0.09 was released, and that is 57%. 2020 saw another dip of 2,337.28 being collected and only 790.29 being released, and that is 34%. In 2021, listen, in 2021, 2 billion and 56 million point 06 was collected, and only 127 million was released.
Right.
And that is only 6% under the watch of Kojo Oponkroma as information minister and his government. Then in 2022, 1 billion 944.91 was collected, 0 was released. So if you have a government that is performing so miserably in terms of release of funds to National Health Insurance Authority for its function, how can you say that when the NDC talked about a review of a program which they had reviewed and made it national in character, instead of the mutual system that operated before it came into power, you say if they say a review, it meant cancel. Look, it can only take a sinking government, a government that desires to misinform, to lie absolutely, to present the kind of things the information minister has presented this morning on your platform.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Kofi. You heard me say I disagreed with him on some of the things he said, but he kept insisting that it's a banter between the president and the former president. So for him, we should leave it at that level. But
we can't take that as just a banter.
No, I get
it should be supported with facts.
Absolutely, especially when Kojo speaks for the government. Anyway, so let me come back to Mr. Musa Dankwa. Paragraph had an opportunity to respond to some of the things Kofi has said before we move to Kumawu. But yes, sorry, Musa.
Yes.
This was where you were. So I'm not going to look at party affiliations. October 2022.
Quickly.
Okay.
In October 2022.
Okay.
We saw that in Kumawu there was trouble brewing for the former MP and nobody knew about it. In October last year, 73% of voters in Kumawu said they were floating voters. 73% of Kumawu people said they were floating voters.
Okay.
Only 19% said they were MPP members. And 5% were NDC and 9% 16% were floating voters. Now, when we went back this time around, it's turned upside down. Now, 74% said, 60% said they were floating voters. MPP is now 73%. Okay. So it aligned to this natural situation. Right. Why? Because the common denominator there was Baswa, and he is not there anymore. Right. Probably he's angering the voters when he was alive. At the time, 76% of the voters said they would not vote for him if he stands again. Baswa.
Oh, so he had become this unpopular?
Yes.
Okay.
And only 26 said they would vote for him. So something was going wrong in Kumawu. Now, before the election, when we asked voters whether they will be influenced to vote because of the inducement, 46% said no, they will not be influenced.
Okay, Musa, let me rudely interrupt you, I beg you, and just say that we also have been joined for this conversation. That's Dr. Jonathan Autry. He's a lecturer at UCC, University of Cape Coast, and also a political science analyst. Doc, let me say good morning to you, and just to acknowledge that you have taken time off your very busy schedule to join us. We're so grateful, sir. Your microphone, if you can unmute.
Yeah, thank you, Musa.
Great. So I'm sure you're watching the presentation by Musa Dankwa so that we can all have a conversation about the numbers that he's churning out. So please go ahead, Mr. Musa.
Okay. And then we found that 36% said they will be influenced to vote because of the inducement that was happening in Kumawu. And only 18% said they will be indifferent about it. Now, what happened? Those who said they will be influenced to vote because of the inducement, 65% of them were voting for Enim, Ernest Enim. Do you get it?
Those who have accepted that they will be induced or be influenced by the project.
Yes. Now, you can be influenced for or influenced against.
Okay.
Now, we found that those who said they will be influenced, 65% of them were voting for Ernest Enim.
Okay.
And for those who said they wouldn't be influenced by the project, 61% of them were still voting for Enim. So he had a broad coalition of those who like the project and those who doesn't make any difference to them.
Okay.
Now, effectively, this translates into 23% of all voters going to the polls to vote for the MPP candidate because of the inducement that was happening there. And this is very significant as far as polling is concerned. Then in the headline poll, we have 56% of voters saying they were going to vote for Enim. We had 17% saying they would vote for Kwekudua, 12% they would vote for Kwesi Amankwah, 1% Kwekudua Jr., and 9% were undecided, and 5% said they would not vote. And let's see how this pans out in the terms of final polling numbers. It takes the polling number to 70% for NS Yao Enim, Kwekudua 20%, Kwesi Amankwah 14%, Kwekudua Jr. under 1%. But what really happened on the day? There was about 57% turnout compared to 78% in the last election. So a huge drop in the turnout. It's not unusual for by-elections. But I think this is even better than many by-elections we've seen in the country, like Iowa West Wagon and Talensi. Now, on the day, this is the result. Enim, 15,264. Kwekudua, 2,478. Kwesi Amankwah, 7,323. Kwekudua Jr., 62. In terms of percentages, 71% for Enim, 17% for Amankwah, Kwekudua 12%, and Kwekudua Jr. 0.3%. What happened? Why did the poll change for these two? The poll was largely in line with the first, the winner, but there was a movement within Amankwah and Kwekudua in terms of the polling numbers. What happened? Now, I'll come back to this and show you something here. Altogether, MPP added 304 votes to what they got in 2020. NDC added 1,284 to what they got in 2020. Kwekudua Senior lost 9,220 of his votes. Now, if you divide the number of votes MPP got and that of NDC, NDC did 4 times better than what MPP got on the day in terms of numbers. Effectively, MPP added 2 more percentage to their 2020 numbers, and NDC added 53% to their 2020 numbers. Kwekudua Senior lost 79% of his votes. Now, in the 2020 elections, MPP got 51%, Kwekudua Independent 40%, NDC got 8%. In the by-election, MPP now moves to 71%. And Kwekudua drops to 12%, and NDC goes to 17%. Effectively, NDC added 9 more percentages to what they got last time. MPP added 20% more to what they got, and Kwekudua lost 28%. Now, this has been the history of Kumawu over the years. You could see that anytime there is an independent candidate who is pulling stronger, NDC drops in Kumawu. That pattern is contained. Now that the independent collapses in the polls, NDC goes 17%, and the MPP goes to 71%. Now, what we saw in Kumawu is really realignment of MPP votes. Those who were voting for Dua in 2020 were not NDC voters. They were not floating voters. They were largely MPP voters who were not happy with Baswa. So you saw that Nado got far more in terms of, if you added the vote for Dua and Baswa, was around almost 23,000 to 24,000. So it means that this time around, they just went back home. But NDC could be seen to have added more voters to the number. That's why they were on this 5-3% increase compared to 2% for MPP. So largely, the turnout in Kumawu was lower, and that's not to be expected because the by-election. But if you look at what they added in terms of vote and the investment that went in there, if you are a finance person, this would be a bad return on investment. Now, how does it fit into the breaking the eight? Moro, yesterday you asked me to look at this.
Yes.
Now, let's look at the general election race between the 3 possible MPP candidates.
Yes.
It's going to be either Bawumia, Allen, or Kennedy.
Right.
It won't change.
Those are the 3 front lines.
Yes, 3 front runners.
Okay.
It's a 3-horse race now.
Right.
In the race between Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia and John Dramani Mahama, John Dramani Mahama is on 55%. Baumia on 38%, someone else 7% at this stage. If you go to Alan Chiramatin versus John Mahama race, it is Mahama 54%, Chiramatin 40%, someone else 6%.
Okay.
If you go to Kennedy, it is 38% for Kennedy, 55% for Mahama, and 7% for someone else. So
right.
Kennedy and Baumia are running equal in the polls right now nationally.
Okay.
38.
Now, interesting, look at these three areas. What would determine the fate of MPP is turnout. I will not vote in 2024. Look at the regions with high I will not vote. Western region. Now, the race, differ, they give different outcome. If you look at the Mahmoud Baumia and John Dramani Mahama, in Ashanti region, I will not vote is 12%. Alan Chiramatin and Mahama, I will not vote 9%. Kennedy and Mahama, I will not vote 9%. So Baumia in Ashanti region will increase the voter apathy per this poll at the moment. Look at Greater Accra. I will not vote 17% for Greater Accra in case in the race between Baumia and
Dramani Mahama.
Sorry.
And John Mahama.
Oh, this.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The middle one is Alan.
All right. They'll come back. They'll come back and assist you. But my understanding is that the Honorable Kujapo Nkrumah wants to make a comeback based on what Mr. Kofi Adams has said about government handling of free SHS and the fact that the NDC has a track record of introducing and running social intervention programs more effectively than the NPP. And so the NPP cannot say that anytime the NDC says that there should be a review of a program or a flagship program, it necessarily means that a cancellation, and that the Kujapo Nkrumah would have to come back and tell us, for instance, which social intervention programs have been cancelled by the NDC to warrant the kind of response that the response that the president gave to the former president John Mahama and said, once it is President John Mahama, then if a review is a cancellation. Mr. Kofi Adams is of the view and believes very strongly that it's an issue that ought to be clarified. And also my understanding is that Kujapo Nkrumah himself was listening in. Either was listening or somebody drew his attention. He wants to make a comeback. And so once we get Kojo back on the Zoom link, we would speak to him on this matter whilst Musa Dankwa sorts his issues out. So, okay, so you're back with the regional voter apathy. And you're looking at the I will not vote people in the specific regions.
The apathy in the country.
Right.
So you see Ashanti region recording one of the highest bar.
Okay.
Look at Greater Accra, one of the highest bar.
Right.
Western region, the highest. So you look at each of these races, it gives you which candidate would ignite higher turnover or high voter turnout or less voter turnout. So these numbers are there. And critical for MPP is Greater Accra and Ashanti region. At the moment, I will not vote 17% on the average, 17%.
Okay. Right.
In Ashanti region, on the average, around 9-10%. So they must look at these regions very carefully because over 45% of their supporters in this country live in Accra and Ashanti region.
Right.
They can't play with it. Now, breaking the 8 context, 58% of Ghanaians at the moment are saying that they can't break the 8.
Okay.
27 said yes, they will break the 8. 50 have no opinion. Now, let's look at this. Within MPP, 60% believe yes, they can break the 8. 24 don't believe they can break the 8. In NDC, it is 89 against and 4 yes and 89 no. CPP, 14% yes, 54 no. In PNC, 19 yes, 61 no. In PPP, 25% yes and 63% no. Floating voters, 15% yes, 66% said no in floating voters, which is very key in terms of this election. Other parties saying 7% yes and 69 said no. And those who did not disclose their party affiliation, 19 said yes and 53 said no. Now, these are the regional breakdown of do you believe you can break the 8? With the exception of Upper East, by 44 to 38, no region believes MPP can break the 8. In Northeast, it's tied between yes and no. Then you have a critical look at what I call the magic. The magic. If you want to see where MPP is now in breaking the 8, look at the voter coalition of Nanado in 2020 and how they are voting now. Look, 59% of voters who went to the polls and cast their vote for Nanado are voting for Dr. Mahmoud Baumia. 21% of them have switched camp. They are voting for John Mahama. 8% said someone else. And whopping 12% said they will not vote.
But 21%, that's a huge number.
These are people who went and cast their vote for Nanado.
So if you take it as 100%.
Yes.
If you take that as 100%.
41% of their support.
Wow, that's serious.
Now, if you come to John Mahama, his vote, he's lost 6% to Mahmoud Bawumia.
Okay.
6% of people who went for Mahama last time are now voting for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
Okay.
91% of his people are still voting for him.
Okay.
Look at the deficit, 91-59.
Right.
1% said someone else, and 2% said they will not vote. Voter apathy is within Nado's camp, not Mahama's camp.
Right.
You look at the other races. If it's Alan now gets 63% of Nado's people. 21 goes to Mahama. Sorry, 20 goes to Mahama, 6 someone else, and 10% said they will not vote. There has been a reduction of 2% from here.
I get it.
When you come to Mahama, he's now only 5% are voting for Alan. 91 are still staying put. That number hasn't changed. 2% someone else, 2% they will not vote. So they are steady. That number is not changing, regardless of whoever he's up against. Then you look at Keda Japan, if he's the candidate, 59% of them are voting for Ken, 22 this time again to Mahama, 8% someone else, and I will not vote 10%. Mahama again, he holds 91% of his people. 6 go to Kennedy, someone else 2%, and I will not vote 1%. Look at this is what we're saying. The voter enthusiasm between I will not vote in MPP supporters and NDC supporters is what will make difference in the election 2024. That's it.
Wow. This is very revealing. Musa Damkwa, thank you so very much. And the reason why Kumawu is being used as a baseline is because we saw that the numbers that went to, how do you call it, the independent candidate, Kwekudia, where everybody asking, where's the 11,000? But clearly what you can see is that a chunk of that 11,000 has gone to the NDC and just about 300 and something has gone to the MPP. And that's why that's being used as a baseline to sort of predict that if all factors remain same, this is what is likely to happen in most of the constituencies. Musa, thank you so very much for your time. It's been wonderful having you, and I'll now go to the politicians. You are not one. So as for you, go and chop your wachi and go home. All right, so that's Musa Damkwa of Global Info Analytics. Just passing through briefly to make sense of the numbers that were recorded post-Kumawu by-elections. I'll try and get, in fact, I'll be speaking, I'll be going back to Kojo Ponkroma to respond to some things that the Honorable Kofi Adams has said. That's if Johnson on the back. That's if we have on the back. Let me go to Dr. Jonathan Ochi, though, to just pick his brief thoughts about what he makes. Hello?
Yes, Moro, this is
Kojo Ponkroma is still there. Okay, so Kojo, you want to make a quick rebuttal to some things that Mr.
Yes, I understand that there's been a misrepresentation of my earlier submission, which I quickly need to correct. I must admit I didn't listen exactly, but I understand that my submissions on the conversation between President Akufo-Addo and President Mahama are being misrepresented, and I need to do a clarification.
Okay,
if you can help me.
What Kofi said was quite straightforward. He said the NPP, the president, the New Patriotic Party, doesn't have the moral guts or the moral audacity or the moral authority to even begin to interpret the former president's call for a review to mean cancellation, because the former president doesn't have any history or record of cancelling policies that have been introduced by either the NDC or any other political party. But what the NPP should rather be concerned about is how poorly and how abysmally you have run a very key social intervention such as the NHIS. And he gives us numbers in terms of what has been budgeted for and what has been finally released. And you can tell from the data that the numbers have dwindled quite significantly. And he says that's what you should be thinking about, not trying to twist a genuine and well-intended call for a review of a flagship program. I hope Kofi captures the position, that your thoughts.
Well, not budgeted for, except just not budgeted for what was collected.
What was collected and what has actually been disbursed, right?
Exactly.
And he walks us through the data. So, Kojo, that's essentially what Kofi Adam said. You have anything you want
Kofi,
to say?
Kofi, good morning. Good morning. And again, good morning to the other panelists who joined after I left. I mean, I think that if you are trying to talk about NHIA data today and trying to use it to walk back in time to explain what President Akufo-Addo said 4 years ago, obviously that cannot happen. The conversation that Moro and I are having about something that was said 4 years ago by President Akufo-Addo. And 4 years ago, President Akufo-Addo said he was worried about a comment President Mahama had made in the run-up to the 2020 election. And his worry was about the fact that President Mahama had mentioned that they were going to do a review of one of the flagship programs. And he said his understanding of this review that President Mahama was talking about is that by the time they will be done with it, it will lead to a collapse of that program. And he said his evidence was that prior to the 2009 election, the NDC, led by President Mills of blessed memory and President Mahama, then vice presidential candidate, had promised a review of the National Health Insurance Program. And that the evidence 4 years ago was that neither had they been able to do the review, but that it was performing worse than it was performing at the exit of the Kufuor administration in 2008. And therefore, he was worried when you say you are going to review. I think that's a very understandable context. You don't have to agree with what he said, but that context can be understood. So now if you move forward a few years and then you say you are picking futuristic data to try and go back in time to compete with what he said, I don't think that will be a valid way of doing the analysis. You can disagree with him.
Right.
But it does not mean that the context within which he spoke was out of sorts.
No, but the again, Kofi Adams was questioning the basis for the president's conclusion or for the president's analysis that because, and of course, if I'm going to go with what you're saying, because I don't have the data with me, but let's even assume, without admitting, granted that the NHIS as it was taking over, or as the NPP inherited it, wasn't in the best of shape. That in itself cannot, constitute sufficient basis for the president to have said, based on that, free SHS was going to be collapsed. I think that's where Kofi Adams, you're here. So Kofi wants to set the record straight himself, so that's fine.
Kofi wants to
You were so active in the media from about 2005 through to 2008 campaign period. So you knew very well that the health insurance as operated then was mutual, was district-based. Mutual health insurance. It wasn't national in character. And so the NDC position of a review included many other things and not limited to just one-time premium. To suggest that when you say a review meant that only one-time premium is peddling, to say the least, some untruth there. And so all I sought to indicate clearly was that our position on review of the health insurance as it existed then went beyond just a one-time premium. And I gave examples to indicate that we reviewed the program, made it national in character. We took it away from the mutual as it was operating to a national health insurance. And don't you consider this as a review? And so to suggest that if one said a review, it meant that only one-time premium, and that because one-time premium was not implemented, that was a collapse. I went further to prove in terms of the major source of revenue for health insurance, which is the National Health Insurance Levy, which is the 2.5% VAT which is collected, and indicated releases from the collects from 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, went all the way through 2017, 2018, up to 2022, to indicate clearly to you that the NDC administration released more money to the National Health Insurance Authority than the MPP administration did. So which of this would you be contesting that is not helping the improvement of a policy initiative such as health insurance? So I didn't even expect you to have come back again. Maybe the person who told you maybe misinformed you about what I said.
No, but that is why, as I joined the conversation, as I mentioned, I asked Moro that I understand that the comments I made have been misrepresented and require a clarification. I think you heard me quite clearly.
Well, the person maybe misinformed you.
No. It's not about the person. I think quite clearly I asked Moro that, and Moro made that information available to me, which I have responded to. Now, if you want us to go into an analysis, of how the National Health Insurance Program was functioning as at the terminal point of 2008, and then how it was functioning as at the terminal point of 2016, I'm sure we can bring all the parameters and deal with that, because it will not just be about releases. You will recall that your finance minister, my very good friend Mr. Setekwe, at the terminal parts of the 2015-2016, had a major challenge with the national health insurance. Kofi, do you recall that?
I recall there were challenges, but those challenges are not as worse as we have today.
The major challenge he had with it was that despite the fact that he was making releases, those releases had been mortgaged to construct head office buildings in many parts of the country. These are matters of public record. And so the question becomes, was it necessarily translating into an improvement in the utilization of individuals at the end? Because it is one thing to say that, okay, I've moved it from mutual to national and I've released more money. But for the average people in your constituency and my constituency, they are not debating about whether it has moved to national or it is mutual or that you have released more money. They are asking themselves, are the health facilities at the bottom receiving as much payment as they were, whether it was from mutual or national, as compared to before? And therefore, is it translating into a higher quality of service for me at the end when I go to the health facility? And it is in that context that President Akufo-Addo was quite clear. In fact, I remember the AV expression that he used. I think he said something like NHI Egbon or something like that. That like it was dead. They had collapsed. You will be able to help me. You know I'm not good in that language.
I will not help you. I can't help you.
No, help me. And it is because the person using it at the bottom, never mind if somebody says he has released more money, the person using it at the bottom will go to a facility and the facility will say that they have not received payment, and therefore it now was becoming a cash and carry system. It is in that context that President Akufo-Addo said he is worried when talk is made of a review, because the last time talk was made of a review, and Kofi, you can't take out the one-time premium, because the one-time premium was a major part of your review promise in 2008. It was, in fact, it was a major plank of that review promise. In that review promise that was made, it wasn't a conversation about moving it from mutual to national and building regional headquarters buildings. It was mostly about the fact, and I remember when President Mills was going on the house-to-house campaign, speaking in front, one of the major points was that it was going to be a one-time payment. So you can't take that out. So if we want to do a full review to understand whether the president is justified in that comment or not, I very much believe that we can do that. But the point I wanted to make was that you cannot therefore go back in time with future data and say that therefore the president's comment suffers a flaw today. That's the point I wanted to make.
All right, Kojo, just a small point. Okay. That you cannot rule out. You cannot rule out infrastructure in delivery of service. You can't.
Head office building.
I'm saying that you cannot rule out infrastructure from service delivery, whether at the headquarters, regional, district level, and what have you. Infrastructure is key. Infrastructure is key to service delivery. So you need that. That is one. Two, if you are talking about turning a health insurance system into a cash and carry, it is worse form today. Today, even simple paracetamol, you can't even get. Simple paracetamol you can't even get under health insurance. And you know this. You and I know that in our constituencies, simple paracetamol they can't even get. And when you go, they will tell you, if it is health insurance that you want, this is the service. If it is, you are really... The health minister himself came out recently. Did you hear him? Did you hear the health minister when he said the system has collapsed and that even he doesn't use it? Did you hear the health minister? That he says the health insurance has collapsed. I'm not the one saying it. The person you have put in charge, the person His Excellency, the President, has put in charge of health, says that the thing has collapsed. Did you hear him? Even after all that we have done. So, Kojo, don't challenge this. When sometimes it's good to let certain things go. I know you are information minister, so you want as much as possible to try and position government in a certain way. But where it is bad,
that's not what it is.
Where the minister, I'm saying that Kojo, your colleague, the minister for health, the minister for health said the thing is collapsing.
There's a specific comment that I've made. And that comment explained a context within President Akufo-Addo said something.
Well, I will leave it for the viewers. I
kept quiet for you to speak. If I just may make the point about head office infrastructure. You see, if people pay health insurance premium or we collect NHIL levy, let's ask the average person at home whether he expects that building should be used or that money should be used to put up head office infrastructure or used to pay the health facility down there. And if the Honorable Secretary is complaining that he has a challenge with the Health Insurance Authority because the bulk of the money he's releasing is being used to construct infrastructure for head office in the regional capitals, as against being used to pay for service delivery at the ground, I'm not sure that we can then say that the infrastructure is equal to an improvement in healthcare delivery at the bottom. Put that aside. And then we can have another conversation about today. Is health insurance functioning better today than it was in, 2017 or not? That is also a fair conversation to have today. But what I'm saying to you, Kofi, just to wrap up, is that that cannot derogate from the point that President Akufo-Addo was making in the run-up to the 2020 election. And I'm not sure we should split hairs.
All right, well, I think, Kojo, it takes away from the president. I strongly still think that we did not collapse the health insurance system. We improved it. We did a lot to improve it. Today, the health minister himself says it has collapsed. And that is the statement of fact that the health minister himself made.
Okay, Kojo, thank you so much.
And I think it's quite clear that the president's comments in the run-up to the 2020 election about the state of the NHIA at that time, as compared to when it was inherited, are not matters that we can disagree with.
All right, thank you, Kojo, thank you. It's a pleasure having you back. We'll go to, let me read some of the messages. I'll probably ask Dr. Jonathan Ochi whether he has any viewpoint to express on this matter. As for Pargrave, he says, look, once my information minister is there. Kojo, I didn't tell you, Pargrave said hi. I should have said that before taking lead.
Actually, Kojo should be campaigning for Pargrave. He will be a good material in Parliament. Yeah, no, that's what he should be doing. Instead of trying to defend.
I know you personally want to campaign for him.
Trying to defend. Well, no. Not a personal campaign, but it's a fine material.
Yeah, well,
I've observed him from afar. He's a fantastic material, and he will be a good representative for his people. You can't keep such material away from the house.
Right. It's a fantastic Moro, good morning material. To you and your panelists. Moro, you and I know that the country is going the wrong direction under the leadership of the Nana Bamia's administration. I can testify to you now that the wind of victory in the NDC has started blowing. Change is coming. I am Sussman in Accra. This one, he says, this is the first time I'm watching this show, and I think I'm stuck. I like the quality of conversations that's taking place. But tell Mr. Kofi Adams that he needn't even argue about this. It's quite clear that the NDC doesn't collapse policies. We improve it. Allow the MPP to continue with their propaganda. We, who are the voters, know who collapses policies and who don't. But yes, Kofi Adams still thinks that it's important to set the record straight on the NDC's performance when it comes to how it manages social policy interventions. In fact, there's even a more fundamental question as to the NDC being asked to name one social intervention program. And you hear the MP communicators keep asking and asking and asking. Maybe Kofi would, since we're talking about social policy interventions, he may want to help us in this direction. Now, this one here says that, now please, those of you who are calling the 055 number, please don't call the number as displayed on the screens. It's actually meant for WhatsApp messages, not for calls. I beg you. Please, Kojo, you think you think when you bypass examination questions for final year SHS students to study because you think WASI has been repeating past examination questions and WAEC repeats past questions and students' results are better, and to you this means improvement in SHS, then we're doomed as a country. Good morning. If Kojo Ponkroma is one of the Arabian countries, blah, blah, blah. Okay, no, that's exactly not what Kojo said. Please don't twist it. Sami from Agbogba says, please play back all the videos of Kojo Ponkroma and Akufo-Addo said about JDM suggestion or review of free SHS program. If Kojo Ponkroma thinks Ghanaians cannot think on their feet and analyze issues, is deceive himself. Sami from Agbogba sends that message. And loads of your messages. And this one here from Kuranche a very good friend. He says that the metrics for learning outcomes cannot be taken from WAEC results. If he understands education evaluation, he should talk and get data from university lecturers or tertiary institutions for the outcomes of these products. We're not oblivious about how the WAEC results are procured. He should come to us as universities and we'll tell him the proper outcomes.
Exactly.
And this one's an intelligent Kofi Adams. That's what a proper review of the NHIS gave us, from district mutual health insurance to national health insurance scheme. Ask Con if it takes district mutual insurance to national health insurance as a review or not. Whoa, lots of messages. Now, I'll read the final one. Not asking, that's the end. There's loads of them, but this particular one is sent a long time ago. Kamal Amasam Bruni says, Moro, much as Kumawu is the stronghold of the NPP, but I would like to attribute largely the massive victory to the weeks of hard work and boots on the ground to our national organizer, Nanabi, his deputy, Chris Lloyd, and other national executives for the effective mobilization and well-coordinated campaign activities in Kumawu. Greetings to lawyer Jerry Ahmed Shoaib, incoming PC for Wage Agbawe constituency. Now, let me go to Dr. Jonathan Otri. He's been there for a while now. Doc, I know we invited you to have a conversation with us to talk about Kumawu by-elections, but here we are. We have a big conversation, big debate as to what review actually means. It's unfortunate, but that's Ghana for you. Government is talking about reviewing the flagship programs. The NDC said, wow, so you know there's something called review, but when we talk about it, you say cancellation. Why are you doing propaganda with the word review? I don't know where you stand on this particular issue, just briefly, and then you can tell me what you make of the numbers from Kumawu as well. So 2 questions in one, and I can come back to my resource persons here.
Let me say good morning to our viewers and colleague panelists, Mr. Adams and our group. I'll start by saying that I think the president is making the work of the information minister too difficult. The information minister, Kojo Nkrumah, that we all know, appears so somber. And it is because the government is performing abysmally. It is just quite unfortunate that he is even struggling to make meaning of what the IMF put out there. Please, when you struggle to have, to lay some kind of interpretation on some of these things, they don't really augur well for your integrity. And for me, I feel pity for him because he was, or he is, one of the shining, examples of the brains that the NPP, government seem to have. And he's just gone down the grave. I'm just so much, surprised. Being an information minister, I have said that if somebody goes to do something wrong and I'm information minister, I'm asked to defend, I'll consider first my integrity and ask the person to go and do that particular thing. I will not put my integrity on the line because I will also be considering my future political career and my integrity. Mr. Nkrumah cannot in any way do a somersaulting on what the IMF said with respect to the free SHS and how it is poorly targeted. He read it out, trying to interpret it in a different manner. Please, it does not construe what he intended to say. With the product, you see, one texter commented on the product that have come to the universities. Moro, well, I can assure you I have scripts before me. I have told my final year students that I'll bring their scripts to class next week and read it out to them. Sometimes you ask yourself, how were they able to get to wherever they've gotten to? It's terrible. It is really terrible. How can an SHS product get an A in French, and when he is given French to read in the university, he or she is running away? It's because of the means by which they procured the grade. If we are going to gloss our eyes over this, it is our future that we are throwing away. The politics of review and cancellation is something that we can talk about. If the government of the day, which is in possession of data, cannot in any way tweak the data to ensure that things are done appropriately for the country, but it will take the opposition to tell us that, look, the way and manner you are going will all end up in some kind of bunker, and you cannot see that, then you have no business being in power. It is just quite unfortunate. The politics, the partisan politics will have to stop somewhere. And we need to ensure that the right things are done for the nation. Look, for crying out loud, if it is not the MPP, it is the NDC. If it's not the NDC, the MPP. Why can't they do the right thing? Why can't they do the right thing? So for me, that is just my little, comment on the thing that has transpired.
All right. So now straight to Kumawu.
Well, I haven't seen the data that Mr. Musa has presented. Of course, the MPP should not be tickling themselves and be laughing. I think that deep within them, behind the scenes, they are really worried about what transpired. This is your stronghold. And the kind of dramatic performances that we saw, the chairman, and all the other bulwarks of the party, went out there to do. It's quite interesting. They must be very much worried, because if you could just get 304 as additional votes, and the main opposition get over 1,000, if you should replicate that within the Ashanti region, then it means that you are going into opposition. That is a reality. Of course, you don't expect them, because if GCPP, CPP, PNC, all of them go into the contest saying that they are going to win, you don't expect the MPP to say they are going to lose. They will definitely tell us that they are going to win. But the battle is on the ground. The Kumawu may not even be the right way of assessing exactly the popularity of the party in government, that is the MPP. And having seen what transpired, I think that they should be more worried. And I'll be very much glad to see if the project that they tried tackling will be continuing, because the people of Kumawu deserve that. But you see, the Kumawu is just a microcosm of what is happening in the Ashanti region and probably the entire nation. Find out tomorrow, why is it that our president tells us that when it comes to Ashanti region in the Fourth Republic, he's done more roads than any other government that has come in the Fourth Republic. And yet, when it comes to complaints about bad roads in the entirety of the nation, it's the Ashanti region that people are going demonstration on. Don't forget, the people of Koforidua have threatened to do the same. Koforidua is in the Ashanti region. Roads are not abstract kind of thing that you can say it is somewhere. You will have to see it. It's visible. You'll be driving on it. I remember the president told Mr. Mahama that, you said you've constructed all these kinds of roads in this country. But when he was driving about, he never saw that. That was before the 2016 elections or so. But he was told that probably he was sleeping. That is why he did not see it. But that is just bad. So the Kumawu, I have said that the real test is Asin North. The real test is Asin North. And I tell you what, the central regional chairman that the NDC has elected is a strong guy. And he is equally, up to the task. So the MPP will have a huge or a Herculean task on their hands. Because the man is quite resourceful. I know him personally, I know him from afar as well. And so that in itself is the real test ground for the MPP as far as by-elections, are concerned. So by and large, I would say that Kumawu has come and gone. The NDC probably, pat themselves in the back because they didn't have all these kind of resources that were displayed by the MPP. We saw in some video footages here and there, and so on and so forth. And so to even have such a number, it tells you that the data that Musa has presented to us, it gives us more information about how the NDC has become more attractive. And that, attraction, you could even see that with the professionals that, seem to have joined the fray during their primaries. And they seem to have elected some of them. Of course, others fell off. But that, for me, tells me that they have really repackaged themselves and they are really ready for the 2024 elections.
Thank you, Doc. It's a pleasure talking to you, sir. Let me come to Mr. Parker Bwashidankwa. Do you have any comments to share on Kumawu? And then Kofi Adams will end it. We have just 12 minutes to end the show.
Yes, Mauro, a very good morning to you and to your colleagues, and very interesting conversations this morning. But really to state that Kumawu was one of the highlights for the New Patriotic Party. Very good congratulations to all the teams that made this a possibility for us to retain our seats in Kumawu. Mauro, are you aware that there's been close to about 31 by-elections in the country?
Right.
And 16 of those have been won by the New Patriotic Party.
Right.
12 of that has been won by the NDC,
okay.
One by Independent, and then one by CPP from 1993 up until date.
Right.
We are very assured that with the very good efforts and works that we are putting into infrastructural works and developmental works in this country, Asin North people will be happy to have the New Patriotic Party represent them in Parliament and have a stronger majority. You are aware the type of parliament that we have, especially in this 8th parliament. But I'm in no doubt in my mind that we would work hard to ensure that Asin North, we would have some commanding leads as it relates to that effect. But you're also aware that in terms of internal structures of our New Patriotic Party, nomination forms have been opened for flag bearership for the party. It opened yesterday. Over the next 4 weeks, persons that are desirous to stand for flag bearers would have an opportunity to pick up their nomination forms. I think that the data is reading close to about 10 people or so that are going to take their forms. And if that happens, it means that we are going to have a super delegates Congress, which would be in August. And once we are done with that, that would reduce the number to about 5. And then we would go into a major Congress November 4th to determine who the next leader for the New Patriotic Party would be. But I'm in no doubt in my mind that whoever the delegates decide to choose would be a very good contest between the flag bearer of the NDC, John Dramani Mahama. And 2024 is going to be an election of standards, election of innovation, election of the future, election where the Ghanaian people will need to make a clearer determination of what path they would want to chart. And I'm in no doubt in my mind that the Ghanaian people will choose none other person than the person who leads the New Patriotic Party.
Okay. All right, Mr. Kofi Adams, I don't know how you feel when you hear some of your party followers criticize the party for not putting up a very strong performance in Kumawu. Some of them under the impression they could have done much better, and they didn't even talk about, that collation wasn't done properly. There's all kinds of things that when you follow social media, you hear. I mean, I don't know what kind of feedback you've been taking since Kumawu.
Well, Morus,
whether there are any issues you feel you need to address.
Moru, if you follow social media, you hear all kinds of things.
True, I agree with you.
Following social media, we saw results being declared for MPP having 850, NDC having some single numbers and what have you.
Right.
When the highest number of voters per polling station in that constituency was about 714.
Right.
So following social media, you hear
deceptive.
It can be very deceptive. In every political party, we have various shades of opinion. We have persons who only look for a win. They are looking for a win and nothing. So when you go into a contest and you don't win, for them, you haven't performed well. So they reserve a right to speak that way, because for them, all they see is a win, whether it's an MPP stronghold or whoever stronghold it is a win they are expecting. You have other persons who analyze the data, like Mr. Musa Dankwa has just done, and then the lecturer did, and so on and so forth, who would do an analysis of the data and give an indication that this is a positive outcome for NDC, and it should be looking negative for MPP, even though they have won. And Moru, sometimes, like people said, MPP can tickle themselves and laugh. And I sit here. In 2015, we took a seat that they were holding from them. Talency was being held by MPP. The MP resigned and became the overlord of the traditional area. So he was alive and still had the influence to influence things. We went in for a by-election and we won that seat. It didn't stop MPP from winning the 2016 elections.
True.
It didn't stop them from winning, even though we took that seat from them. It was their seat. and we took it.
So the point is that by-election outcomes can be deceptive.
So it can be deceptive. That is one.
You've got to be careful.
And two, don't deceive yourself when you go and pick back your own seat, especially with numbers dwindling. Especially with numbers dwindling, because in 2015 we took a seat that you were holding from you with a huge margin, but we still lost the 2016 elections. So I don't see why they will be tickling themselves and be like that you took back your seat and so with even reduced votes, because the Kwekudia senior was an MPP person supported by key MPP persons in 2020, no doubt about that.
Right.
Both financially
After he
and
broke
even
ranks.
after he broke ranks.
Yes.
You see, we sometimes have party senior persons sponsor independent candidates. It happens in both parties.
True.
It happens. Some of them succeed, some of them fail, some of them will do so well, like the Kwekudia did in 2020.
True.
This time round, they decided not to back him. And so the expectation was for most of those votes that were not available to him to have returned. But the votes didn't return. It means they are still decided. If I were MPP, I would be weeping. If I were MPP, I would be weeping. I would not be smiling and be singing Kumbaya and be running. Because considering the kind of investment that they put in the roads, health facilities that have been abandoned for many, all of them, all of a sudden, springing up. The roads minister was there and he said that they are not doing the road because of the by-election. I said, why do you have to even worry yourself to tell us you are not doing it because of when it is so clear that you are doing it because of by-election? So, for me, clearly, the MPP can tackle themselves. I think that it was a good
If you
showing.
check from 1996, the numbers have been coming down.
Well, you mean
That's
the
coming on
NDC?
Kumawu, yes.
The
The
NDC
NDC
numbers.
numbers in Kumawu have been
Sure.
coming down.
You know that the performance of Jerry Rawlings
Okay. Had an
in
impact.
Ashanti region and Eastern region cannot be equal. At
it's
least
unmatched.
we are yet to have a candidate who can equal the performance of Jerry Rawlings in all the regions across.
I agree. I
Indeed,
agree.
Jerry Rawlings won Eastern region before.
For the NDC.
With
True.
Jerry Rawlings, we've won Eastern region before.
Right.
So it is expected that with time, we will get to a certain level and then be picking up. Our performance for this by-election for me is good. The same way the parliamentary candidate saw an improvement, I believe strongly that the presidential candidate,
that
His
replicating
Excellency,
in Ashanti?
His Excellency His Excellency John Dramani Mahama would be doing far better
In Ashanti
than he
region.
did in Ashanti region. That's going to happen clearly. That look, whoever is the MPP candidate, they will suffer voter apathy. Whether it is Alan or Mahamudu Bawumia, they will suffer apathy in Ashanti region. No matter what they do, they will suffer apathy. That alone will result in a better percentage performance for the NDC candidate. But I'm more than convinced that in terms of numbers, we'll be seeing actual numbers also increase for John Dramani Mahama in Ashanti region and in the Eastern region.
All right.
And
Let
so
me-
we will work for it. We are not just going to sit down and think that, because we did well in Kumawu, it's good, and so on and so forth. No, we are going to work for it. A lot was put into getting the results that was gotten. And in terms of collation, what some people did was to show an MPP screen and then show the human beings in the case of NDC and said one collation was super and another was. All you needed to do was to also check if the NDC desired a screen. Maybe we are not interested in projecting the results in there. That's why we didn't even have to put a screen in there. They could have also shown us the human beings. Right. And let's see how serious they were. Right. How many laptops they had before them, taking results from different sources. And you, the media, you see, sometimes also you put out some argument that don't help the cause. As political parties, when we are collating results, we rely on many methods. Sometimes, if Palgrave is my agent, Palgrave can send me the results through a phone call or just through a test, a system I have put in place. In terms of Electoral Commission, they will not rely on a phone call. They have to wait for their officer, the presiding officer, to return with the ballot box and material to their center before collating. So when I hear people say that, oh, MPP collected their results, and when the Electoral Commission also collated, they got same or similar. Of course, were you expecting them to get something different? If they had gotten something different from what we had, from what MPP had, that is where we would have been raising the issues.
Okay.
So political parties sometimes are ahead of Electoral Commission because of the systems that we used.
I get it.
I know you don't have enough time.
I know.
You use the time for other things. I want Kojo for us to come and debate social interventions and how NDC has. Then that is why they question which social intervention have we introduced. Because look, Moru, what you should be rewarding NDC for not thinking that tomorrow you will have my good friend Palgrave and Co. question us that what did we introduce?
Okay.
We didn't care about that. What we sought to do was to improve what already existed.
Right.
For example, take school feeding. What did we do with school feeding?
Okay.
We removed it from some of the urban schools that didn't need the school feeding and sent it to rural areas where they needed it the most and increased the amount of money that is allocated for that purpose.
Right.
We did same with many other programs. Look, when they introduced this transport system, we could have collapsed it and introduced something new. No, we sought to improve it. We didn't do what MPP is good at doing. The MPP sought to collapse the National Mobilization Program and introduce what? National Youth Employment Program. We will not do that.
Right.
If there's a program, what we seek to do is to improve it. And these are the people you trust governance into their hands so they can improve programs. And that is why they will question us, what did we introduce? We should be discussing the programs we improved.
Unfortunately, MCR says we should go. I don't know how Pargrave is going to take this. Pargrave, you're the only one. You don't help me.
Pargrave must win. No, but Pargrave must win.
MCR says it's time. And then they're going to cut us. We have just 2 minutes to go. Pargrave, just maybe a minute.
I think in a minute, really just to thank the Ghana Police Service and the EC for administering peaceful elections in Kumawu.
Okay. All right. So I want to thank my viewers. Big thanks to Mr. Palgrave Dankwa for making time off. As usual, his very busy schedule to join us. I also want to thank Kojo Ponkroma, the Information Minister, for joining us on Inside Pages. I also want to thank Mr. Kofi Adams, a member of Parliament for the Boem constituency. His constituents love him to bits. He will be the Mugabe of the Boem constituency, definitely, unless he decides not to go again. I also want to say a big thanks to Dr. Jonathan Oche for joining us, and also Mr. Franklin Kujo of Imani Africa. My name is Aldumoro. Thanks for watching. Same time next week, Saturday, I will be here again with another edition of Inside Pages. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.